We've gathered a team from New South Wales property, building and design industry at the Australian Institute of Architects to count down the state's top 10 architectural statements of the year. Our team is guided by New South Wales Government architect Peter Poulet and Heidi Pronk of Mackenzie Pronk Architects.
A different focus, I think, of the projects that are being put forward with a very strong social agenda and a very strong sustainability agenda that we perhaps have seen a little less of in some of the other episodes.
Sydney likes to sell itself as being big and brash and bold. It loves a good blockbuster. It's something about competing with the scale of that magnificent Sydney Harbour and the spectacle of the Opera House. So it's a real surprise that the top 3 today are modest, they're hidden and they're subtle.
Project number 10 caught the eye of landscape architect Sasha Coles from Aspect Studios.
I like it because it does respond beautifully to the Australian climate, the subtropical climate. In a way, the architecture dematerialises, the walls fall away, and what you're left with is timber structure and landscape.
This project started with this, but it's not just about where you are, it's what you do with it. So Luke, this was a modest family home.
Yeah, designed for a family of 5 on a 190 square metre footprint. So it was all about connecting to the outside, and we were exploring this conventional stud framing house and how we could build a lightweight house on a modest budget.
So you took standard size materials off the shelf.
So it's all set out on CFC sheet sizing and timber framing code. It was just framing these elements and these materials and getting the most out of them we could, and using local tradesmen to do that.
So this is a screen or a buffer?
Yes, it is of sorts, and because it's a batten screen, we weren't so sure initially because of the sound travelling up and from the upstairs to the downstairs, but in fact it's turned out to be fantastic because I've got a lot of small children and they don't have a chance to get into any mischief without me hearing them. But with these, we can open them. If you push on the brass,
okay,
and slide them open.
And what an extraordinary view.
Yeah, it's beautiful. We love it. And if I'm lucky, I get to see some whales.
So the table and the floors and the stairs and the flooring upstairs?
Yeah, they're all recycled Oregon. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's just great to use a recycled product that has had a history.
And it has a kind of industrial past.
It does. In fact, that design in general has a bit of an industrial feel, which we really like. What I really enjoy is being able to open up the house and have that real indoor-outdoor experience.
Number 9's ingenuity was praised by Chris Ball from CBD Builders.
From a builder that desires to do difficult work, this kind of ticks all the boxes. It cascades down the cliff. It's got interesting architectural features, the curves, the angles that it plays with, the counterlevers, the concrete beams, a really good project.
Hello Anoop, nice to meet you.
Hi Tim.
Now I know this is 4 stories, I believe it, I just can't see it.
That's because we go down, not up.
Wow, I think this is where I'd spend all my time.
It's a lovely part of the house. It's the main living area. We've got the dining area, the kitchen, the TV area and my study. So it's a place where we just talk, eat, connect.
The house has 4 stories, how does it work?
So top level is our master bedroom, and then the level below is the kids area where they'll live, and a separate guest space. Then right at the bottom we've got a self-contained apartment for a 3rd generation of living.
So from here I can see, Anoop, that you would have daylight on this terrace from morning through the day to sunset.
I love the light, it's important to me, and then we get the lovely view by the end of the day.
This is the best site you can get for an architect, I think, because it's completely unique. We had this huge tumbling kind of massive rocks coming down. And this is why we had to, keep a small footprint and maximize the height.
And I see what you've done here is a kind of stack the floors and then scissor them.
As you can see, every time you scissor, you form a terrace and have an outdoor space.
And it strikes me with that sunset, it's also about providing not only outdoor space, but also shade.
Yes, absolutely.
Keeping the house cool.
Yes.
These are the original hand drawings done by Luigi long before running the gauntlet of councils, builders and budgets. It's so rare to see the very first drawings so accurate of the end result, and it's a real testament to the clear vision of this family and their architect.
Ian Anlazark of BCA Certifies was impressed by number 8 for its novel design.
In one of the lower stories, they have incorporated the sandstone rock face within the rooms, so that actually seems to bring the rock wall into the house, and it looks fantastic. It's just something that you just do not see.
This is classic for Sydney's North Shore. An 11-metre drop, and the brief was a home to age in. Look at that. That is some rock, Richard.
This the sandstone escarpment that ran right underneath the old house that was here, that was demolished. It's got great thermal mass that keeps the temperature really stable, and rather than build on top of it and destroy it, we preserved it and exposed it right through the bottom of the house.
The first impression is that roof, it seems to float.
That's right, this roof is doing a lot of things. It scoops that northern winter light down into these living areas, which warms this space, and it also captures those breezes that are coming up the valley and lets the hot air vent out the top. So this room is great for winter when we can have all the doors closed, and they're like movable walls, so they're all heavily insulated, double glazed, but it can also be opened right up in summer. So even on a grey old day like today, we've still got plenty of shelter from that big canopy roof. So I've done it here in the living spaces, but also in the 2 bedrooms on the east. It's all about trying to connect with the landscape.
So the brief was a simple one: build us a good house for the rest of our lives. And the building is on a cliff face, but we can live on this floor, which has a bedroom, the dining room, the kitchen and the sitting room. Downstairs we have my study, another bedroom, and that's accessible both by stairs and lift.
Who doesn't love falling asleep with the sound of rain lightly falling on the roof, or in summer a light breeze wafting in from the garden? This is the very best of Sydney. It's a tree house anchored in the sandstone.
We're counting down New South Wales's top 10 architectural statements of the year. Leading the judging is Ken Slattery from Cement, Concrete and Aggregates Australia, and Matt Lloyd of Lysart.
Given the projects that we've had to talk about, it involves landscape architecture, public spaces, building structures. We've got a diverse range of people that bring a lot of knowledge to the table that can comment on all of those aspects.
Project number 7, and Damien Hadley from Cantilever Engineers led the discussion.
It's kind of like the client said, it isn't broke, and they were driving that as well. It isn't broke, we like it, we want to keep it, and we think we can work around it. And the architect, I think, really listened to what they were saying and then used that and just put a modern spin on it.
Out here, an owner can choose to knock down and build new. No neighbours, no tight council rules. So why would you keep a slightly quirky stone cottage? Wow, this massive stone doesn't give much away from this side, does it?
This is actually the house as we found it on this side. The story is the original owner builder who built the house worked in a quarry, so I think he had good access to stone, obviously.
So you fell in love with the stone straight away?
Not originally, but it started to grow on us, and you'll see what we mean when we go inside.
This really is a transformation inside.
Yes, but would you believe the original house actually had a series of pokey rooms here. You can see the lines of the original rooms there, and it was quite a dark space. You would actually have no idea that this amazing view is in front of us.
There's a real sense of being protected with the stone behind our back, but this incredible front row seat to a valley unfurled before us.
That's right, it's a classic case of prospect and refuge.
That old architectural device of protection and outward look.
In essence, you know, it is quite a modest house, but it's a modest house where we can afford this $1 million view in front of us. Actually, this is one of many projects on a much larger project that's actually in front of us here. We have 280 acres and 100,000 trees of this bioregion that's been planted. It's a complete vision for how this place will transform.
Now I get it. These guys are thinking 300 years into the future, and it shapes what they truly value. It's about doing more carefully with less. It's a masterwork in modesty.
Number 6 was admired by Adam DeMarco of online publication The Urban Developer.
It's an amazing building. It's made out of timber. There's nothing more natural or organic than this. It's innovation within our construction sector. It's a way of architects, engineers and builders ultimately coming together to deliver more sustainable building outcomes.
350 years ago, the Great Fire of London wiped out a fair chunk of that city. The result was the world's first building rules. Brick and stone were in, timber was out. So it's ironic that our future may mean learning from the past. Alec, we are in Australia's first timber office building.
We are, and with that there was some risk because Australia's not used to timber in a commercial environment. They thought it might be unsafe, it would burn down. They also thought the interiors would be unattractive.
It's not at all, but I do notice it's empty, so is it unfinished?
It's finished and the tenants are fitting it out. They have the ability to access all the floor, they can change all the surfaces very easily, and in a sense the timber is the beauty of the interior. It smells beautifully, it looks good, and it's giving them the character they want for their fit out.
And have a look at this corner, Tim. It's a good example of how it all comes together.
Wow, they are really massive structural sections, aren't they?
And they're all structural. It's not a decoration, it's not a veneer, it's not a cladding, it's pure structural timber. So the floors and the colonnade columns are actually recycled Australian hardwood. They're 100 years old and they've actually been reclaimed from the Barangaroo wharves and piers on site here.
And so the timber doesn't quite come to the ground, you've stopped it.
We have. Timber rots when it hits the ground, so we've kept it up off the ground.
And you've shaped it into a column.
100-year-old timber in regular rectangular form, carrying all the loads in compression, tension and shear, transforming and distributing that load through completely contemporary technology to make the concrete.
Beautiful. This is a daringly simple idea. To build in wood, a material that captures and stores carbon. So while others may argue about a clean future, this building really is the future.
Aidan Mawhinney of furniture design company Living Edge acknowledged Number 5's big thinking approach.
This example of medium density housing not only looks beautiful, but it's also setting the way for the future and what Sydney and the suburbs need to embrace.
When you really think about it, all buildings come from the past, whether they were finished yesterday or 100 years ago. So what makes a building timeless? So from the street, this is quite a tough building.
Tough, but many other things as well. What I wanted to do was have the toughness of the building softened with holes of shadow. And I took the idea from Palladio, who is an architect from the 14th century.
Palladio, he wrote the textbook on architecture.
I think it's very relevant to use all of history and think that perhaps what we're doing is creating history today as well. Buildings need to last. That's the most environmental thing we can do. Have buildings that will last and are loved through the ages.
It's quite a generous but compact apartment. But it strikes me you could have put a wall here, we could have split the apartment and had two. You chose not to.
It's very important in the design of apartments to consider three things. The first is light, the second is air, and the third is privacy. You can see that we've got light coming in from the north. We have the cross ventilation that goes right through the unit, and we have an enormous amount of privacy with the way that we've articulated the facade on the street.
For all the concrete, you've also got this lovely touch of timber.
Timber is a beautiful material to touch, and I think where there's an opportunity to have people touch the building, we soften that with the materiality of timber, and particularly here where it's not shiny. I think it's quite beautiful that it's not shiny and absorbs the light.
Angelo strikes me like a tailor, taking care how he cuts the cloth, thinking about every stitch. But fashion comes and goes, buildings last. And don't we all wish there was a bit less bargain bin and a bit more quality on the rack?
Our team of property, building and design industry leaders are counting down New South Wales' top 10 architectural statements of the year.
The projects that we're looking at today for New South Wales is quite different than what we've seen in some of the other states. It really ranges from high-end residential to public spaces, and the process of judging between those differences in architecture has been really interesting.
Claire Martin of Chrysson Property Law found number 4 to be a standout.
It encapsulates all aspects of a property that I would want to own. I love seeing the bones of the structure and using the historical features of the property and making it modern and warm.
On this site was an old timber mill right in the heart of Balmain. It could have been lost to an apartment development, but the owner imagined more. So how did this project begin?
Well, we had this client that's owned this factory site for 20 years, and the client's a developer, but he just didn't want to turn it into apartments. He wanted to do something so much more. So he looked at this site and he thought, let's turn it into 4 luxury homes. We tried to retain everything we could. So every time we got to a moment where we had to make a decision between keeping something or throwing it away, we always kept it, even if that cost more. Really, this factory was like a Steptoe and Sons sort of factory. They found all this steel and they just whacked it together. So no 2 bits of steel are the same. Everywhere we've inserted a new piece, we've painted it, and everywhere it's original, we've just left it nice and raw. So it's like a little game within the building. You can walk around there, and if you spot a painted bit, you can start to tell the story of the building.
And this void space, it runs right from ground to the roof. It's a lot taller than you usually find in a home.
Yeah, it's a lovely generous space, isn't it? So we pick up the light and throw it all the way down through the building, through the 12 metres of this void. So Heidi, this is what I really wanted to show you. This is a bathroom, but it's bigger than the average bathroom, so it's more bathing room. So it's wrapped in the tiles. You can see tiles all the way around us, light coming through the front here. We've got anchored by a lovely little skylight that washes light down. You just bathe in sunlight. It's a great bathing space. Particularly, it's like one of those American Beauty scenes, you fill up your champagne, the rose petals, you'd never leave the bathroom. We're all little sunflowers, we all want to get up and experience the sun. So what we've tried to do with buildings like this, in this context, is to get up on the rooftop, enjoy the big sky, get this lovely outdoor area. What we tried to do with each room, we tried to give it a lovely outdoor quality. So rather than filling up with more building and more bedrooms, we gave it that generosity of space. And what it does is it gives the room so much more, that prospect beyond.
And allows the building to breathe.
Allows the building to breathe, gives it more surface area, lots of light. Those rooms become the light in the lungs of the home, really.
Our top 3 begins with a public space project, the scale of which impressed Millie Brigden of MB Property Advantage.
The way that they've actually been sympathetic to all of the stakeholders and then sympathetic to their surrounds and sympathetic to the history, it's absolutely beautiful, but then yet they've also kept it playful, which has just given it that real Australian element.
So Rachel, this park's been here a long time.
And it's always been an important people place, Peter. From the Gadigal people who would probably have gathered by the creek. It was the site of the first big colonial agricultural show. And in fact, this little playground here tells a story of an elephant who came to Sydney aboard the Galatea and was actually quarantined in this park for 3 weeks. It also tells a story of a man who would launch his hot air balloon from this very park.
It lost its way in recent years until you got involved.
Well, actually our brief included a police report. It was a pretty unsavoury park. So to deal with that, the main parkway that runs along the railway line as a shortcut from the city to Redfern, we jam-packed that full of activities, basketball courts and tennis courts, and we made sure it had really good lighting.
And these mounds, how did they come about? Did you make them?
This used to be the site of an outdoor ice skating rink. So these mounds deal with the contaminated soil that was here as a result of that use. We've packed a geogrid and geofabric over that dirty soil, and there's 500 mil of clean soil. It provides a fantastic microclimate inside the pool and also an incline for a kid's slippery dip. This is our native meadow roof that we designed with Sue Barnsley, landscape architect, who we worked on actually with the whole park. The brief was for a 1,000 square metre building, and Clover Moore, the Mayor of Sydney, did not want a building in her park. So we drew the landscape up and over the building.
I love the way the light plays on the ceiling here.
The tiny white tiles reflect the light off the water and give it a whole sort of watery feel. In fact, we like to think of this as a big water room. So sustainability was a big driver, and part of the new pool complex was high efficiency gas heaters for the pool, and in fact it's tri-gen ready, which will make it even more sustainable.
This was a project with a massive brief. There was contaminated soil to deal with. There was a 1,000 square metre building to accommodate without losing a blade of grass, a significant history to deal with, and the park was unsafe. This is a story of overcoming those hurdles and providing a fantastic community destination.
Our select group of industry leaders are down to the final 2 properties in the top 10 architectural statements of the year for New South Wales.
Sydney in particular, I think, is an environment that has had a long relationship with architecture, and I think a big focus on building big buildings and pretty flashy buildings. Today brought forward a group of buildings and structures that were quite a bit more modest, but I think much more focused on the social dimension and the sustainability dimension of architecture and design.
Our runner-up was admired for its understated, clever approach by Chris Roach from property developers Fridcorp.
This is a beautiful, simplistic place that has been done on quite small budget, but they've done it to great effect. One of the keys is the simplicity of the palette. It's simple and classic, and the whites work exceptionally well, and they've used the breeze blocks to great advantage. They're fabulous, and they've got a sense of nostalgia about them.
This project is all about simple moves and intelligent thinking.
The owners are a young couple looking to start a family. When they bought the house, they loved the light and they loved the size of the house, but there are a lot of things that weren't working for them. So essentially we tried to rationalise the plan internally, putting all the bedrooms and bathrooms on one side of the house and keeping all the living areas on this side.
Okay, so you've moved the kitchen from that side of the house to over here.
Yeah, and then the funny little dining space that was in here we converted into a walk-in pantry, which now has the fridges and the laundry and lots of extra storage for the kitchen.
It's almost like the TARDIS.
Yeah, it is, but it also means that this area can remain uncluttered.
Okay, so from the garden I really understand it. That's your living fun space and that's your more private, intimate courtyard.
Yeah, that's right. And we created these 2 outdoor rooms. One connects to the living space and one to the bedroom space, but they give you a completely different experience to being outside.
Yeah.
It's its own little room that's open to the sky, and there's a lightness and transparency in the screening.
I love the breeze block.
Yeah, I love the breeze blocks too. I think all architects secretly love breeze blocks.
Ah, really? And what goes on there?
Well, that's just like in the kitchen where we hide all the necessities of suburban gardening life. So the water tanks, the hoses, there's a veggie patch out there. But it also connects these outdoor rooms to this area and creates a courtyard in the garden, which redefines the suburban backyard.
What Eva Marie has done by reorganising the floor plan inside is allow for a far better connection to the great outdoors. It's what Sydney climate allows for and people aspire to.
And now, the judges' pick for number 1. Not only as number 1, but the highest overall score in any state or territory judging yet, which is the Paddington Reservoir. That is number 1.
Project. It is so different. It is turning what is quite a derelict space into something of great value to the public.
The fact that it respects the principles of sustainability has been really valuable, and I think resets the way that perhaps some people think about architecture and what value that it actually delivers back to the community.
This site was a really unsafe and inaccessible ruin, and yet a really significant and rare link to Sydney's past. So the question was, what to do? Why didn't you just put a cap over the whole thing, bury it all and put a park on top?
I mean, why didn't we think of that? It would have been so much easier. But what we did find was that it was this incredible ruin here. There's beautiful crumbling old brick walls, and we thought instead of making a park, it would be fabulous to make a series of urban rooms.
It seems to be bordered by something new and something old, but the lines are blurred.
This screen is an example of that, where you can see that the gap between the screen are in fact bricks. We've conceptually taken the bricks out, and that gave us a lovely kind of matching scale. So it's kind of interesting, we're bringing these 2 architectures or time periods together. But they're not standoffish, they're really snuggling up to each other.
One of the important ideas was that water should reoccupy the space, and particularly the centre under this beautiful roof. You get the reflections of the arches, and then the garden around that pushes all the circulation to the edge where you experience the beautiful curved wall. The Victorian era tended to favour large textures, unusual, exotic plants, so we used that palette.
Do you think of this project as a new project or an old project?
Oh, I think about it very much as a new project, because for us it was about projecting into the future. What could this place be in the future for Sydney? It just happened that in our projection of the future, we embraced the elements that we had inherited.
What makes a city is not the buildings, but the spaces in between. I'd have to say, this space is one of the most remarkable I've ever seen.
Next episode, we judge the top 10 architectural statements for the year in the ACT.